Hi, my name is Jenny Devonshire and welcome to the Pause2Perform Podcast, where we talk about all things relating to wellness, what you should take a pause for in your day to optimise your mental and physical health and perform at your peak. So my name is Jenny Devonshire and you are listening to the Pause2Perform Podcast. And this week I am joined by Hayley White, who is the founder of Menospace, a menopause training and events organisation. So welcome to the podcast, Hayley.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And I thought we could just start off. You could tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what it is you do at Menospace.
Great, yeah. So my background is in organisational psychology. I've got a degree in psychology and a master's in organisational psychology, and I was a corporate trainer for around 10 years within the wellbeing space before COVID, or as COVID came about. And then things moved online, as we all know. And then just around that same time as we were coming out of that, I started to experience some strange symptoms, so psychological, emotional, changes in my period, heavy bleeding, etc. So I went to my GP and I was referred to the hospital, and they did some tests, and I had a biopsy taken and scans, etc. And the upshot of that was a gynecologist telling me that I'm perimenopausal. So I had that meeting with him, and he said, so you're perimenopausal, which means that you can go and get some HRT. And that was about it. And I had no idea really what that meant. So I came home and I started to do some research, and that's when I discovered exactly what that was and how it affects every single woman. Every woman goes through it, and it not only affects every woman, but it affects everybody around us as well. And being from a psychology background and also a corporate training background, I started to notice that there was something missing, a gap there within the workplace, and that women are now working till they're older. And I just thought, right, I need to do something about this. I need to make organisations aware, and I need to help as many women as I can with this. So that's where I am. So I did some training and I got an accreditation, and then I was got some clients, and I started delivering corporate training within the menopause area. And I was doing that for about a year. And then just this year, in January, I launched Menospace. So that's a full story.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I think it's getting better. Davina McCall, I think, has been an excellent champion, like sort of making people more aware. Because I kind of feel like, this is a generalization completely, like women, maybe it's just my friends, but we're quite open about things. But I kind of feel like the menopause is still like a bit of a taboo subject. It's something that people don't really like talking about. And why do you think that is?
To be honest, I think because it's still very much attached to being old and being older. A lot of women don't realise that 1 in 100 women under the age of 40 go through perimenopause. And it shocks me how many women don't know about it. So for example, the perimenopause is the time leading up to the actual menopause, and that's when all of your symptoms start. And that's when it can happen from the age of under 40 and around the age of 40 to mid 40s. And hardly anybody knows that. And a lot of women are shocked when I tell them that. So there's still this kind of misconception that it only happens to women who are in the late 50s or 60s, which is completely wrong. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is right but I kind of feel like, women are kind of judged on their looks quite a lot. So it's all about sort of being desirable and sexy and what have you. So to then kind of think, oh, I'm going through menopause, then that's going to change, I won't be anymore because I'll be kind of like gone through that phase. So I think that might be part of it. Because obviously your experience with the GP wasn't great. From women that you've worked with, what is that like a quite common? Are doctors generally not trained in this?
Yeah, well, that was actually a gynecologist because I was
Oh,
referred because of my symptoms. But in general, women go to see the GPs, and exactly from their experience and the feedback that I get from talking to so many women. For example, women who are in the late 30s, which are a lot of my friends, they've been to the GP, they've been experiencing perimenopausal symptoms, and they've been dismissed as too young when actually we know that they're not. And then on the other side of that, a lot of GPs don't have training in this area either. It's optional. So there's that as well.
gosh, it's terrifying, isn't it? Because I mean, we'll come on to it in a bit, but obviously, the symptoms. I was on your webinar the other day. Like the symptoms are quite extreme, can't they? And if you don't know what it is, I mean, that must be really difficult for people, and especially then they go to the GP and they're not getting help, and then like you had that quite an invasive procedure, didn't you? And
Yeah.
it wasn't. I guess it probably wasn't necessary if they had kind of realised what it was from the beginning.
Oh, there was something else as well alongside.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that was fine. But so
Oh.
I kind of class myself as being lucky for actually being diagnosed, for want of a better term, because a lot of women are dismissed, and it's a very difficult thing to diagnose as well. So yeah.
Well, I suppose there's like loads of other factors it could be, couldn't it? So things like stress can massively affect your periods if you lose weight, or I think it's to gain weight as well, probably. So yeah, I can understand it would be quite difficult to diagnose. But the reason I kind of was really interested in this and wanted to speak to you is that I've got quite a few clients kind of really struggling with perimenopause and kind of leaving their work because they just can't cope in the office environment. So I thought maybe you could share some like kind of common challenges that women face during like the menopause when they're at work, and what can be done to address it.
So the top three symptoms are brain fog, hot flushes, and trouble sleeping, insomnia, or waking up during the night. So as I'm sure you can imagine, if a woman's presenting at work and she suddenly forgets what she's saying, things like that, that's a big issue. I mean, so many of us, we get up to go and get something or do something and actually forget why we're doing it, or we lose our words, we forget nouns, etc. So that's tough. But the brain fog, I think, is probably the worst. And with that, you have a lack of concentration and attention. So yeah, that's what a lot of people experience. And a lot of women tell me that they've been doing their job for many years, sometimes 20, 30 years, and they've suddenly forgot how to do the jobs.
Wow.
And it's terrifying. So then that has a knock-on effect psychologically and starts to create anxiety and starts to create stress and sometimes depression as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of compounding factors within all of this. So it is really, really difficult. And even lack of sleep, as I'm sure you know, just from not sleeping, getting enough sleep, that has a major impact on us, doesn't it? So yeah, there's a lot going on.
And does like the lack of sleep then make your symptoms worse? Is it like a kind of vicious cycle? Gosh,
yeah, exactly.
Terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, from speaking to my clients, it's just the thing that you were saying about like losing confidence, because she was saying like quite a lot of her friends have kind of like given up driving because they don't feel confident anymore. And then, but that's like, once you stop, then it gets even more difficult to start again.
Yeah.
And so, and with the job as well, if you suddenly think, oh, I can't do my job, like you're not going to want to admit that to your boss, are you? And so then you're sort of having to hide it and then try to cover it up and then create more stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
Is that something you've seen quite a lot?
Yeah. And I think just to answer the second part of your question, we need to be talking about it, because talking about it makes you feel normal, and knowing that there's people around you who are experiencing the same thing, it's brilliant. It just takes a weight off, and if you've got employers that are open to raising awareness and having conversations and setting up support groups, etc., around it, then that's half of the problem. It's solved. You wouldn't feel, then you wouldn't, like you've just said, you wouldn't feel bad about about disclosing the symptoms and what's happening.
And what so is it, what sort of some tips that you would suggest for an employer? Like, how can they make the workplace a better place for women as they go through the menopause?
So first of all, I would get a menopause policy put in place. Menopause tribunals citing menopause have tripled in the last 2 years. So it's covering them, basically, first of all. A lot of women have left work in droves because they're not getting the support that they require at work. And every time an employee leaves work, it costs an organisation on average £33,000 to replace that employee. So it's in their best interest from that point of view. A menopause policy provides clarity, it raises awareness, and it shows a commitment from the organisation, and it makes the organisation more attractive to female potential employees as well. And then on the other side of that, what I would do is start having awareness sessions. So that's where somebody like me comes in, which could be a webinar or at lunchtime, or I could go in and run some sessions and start raising awareness, not just amongst women, but amongst men as well. I think it's really important to get SMT buy-in, because that's how you change the culture. And it's really important to get men on board as well. So I think as a minimum, I would advise an awareness session and line manager training for men, to include men as well. And then menopause champion training, and support groups as well if it's a big organisation. So yeah, there's some tips to start with.
Excellent. That's really helpful. Yeah, it's funny. I think the leadership team is so key for a lot of sort of organisational change, isn't it? So you need to get them on board, but also, like I was actually at an HR event last night, and we were saying that, you know, the problem is with sort of managers and leaders that sometimes they're not given the training that they need to support people. They're promoted because they're good at their job, but then if you don't get training, you might not be the best manager, and so, you know, you're kind of in this role and you don't feel sort of confident in it. And so giving them sort of training on how to cope with it or deal with it is an excellent way forward. And so since you've been kind of in this space, have you noticed like companies being more receptive to it? Are they kind of quite open?
They're becoming more open, which is fantastic. A great story to tell is, a few weeks ago, I was delivering training for a huge, very well-known construction firm, and I was running some various sessions, including menopause sessions. And for the final session, there wasn't any women there. It was just 20 men from the construction industry, and they loved it. You know, they thought it was brilliant, and they were really engaged, and they got a lot from it. So that was really surprising in a very good way. So yeah, things are starting to change. And like last night, I was at an event as well, the same as you, and there was a lot of younger women there, really like in the 20s and early 30s, and they were really interested in what I had to say about menopause, and they already want to know what they can start doing for themselves. So I think it's absolutely brilliant. We just need to keep it up.
Yeah, definitely. And on that note, what can people do for themselves? Like, would you recommend sort of doing things from a young age, or do you wait until the perimenopause?
No, absolutely. The sooner the better. So there's a lot around diet. So as we all know, you know, diet is really important, particularly during the perimenopause. We should be kind of cutting out all of the bad stuff like white carbs, or white rice, pasta and bread. What happens during perimenopause is that our hormone levels start to fluctuate, and we start to lose our estrogen. And there are foods that we can take to help replace the estrogen that we're losing, which help to relieve the symptoms. So foods that are high in phytoestrogens, for example. So that's like walnuts, soy, tofu, all of the berries, oily fish, and those kind of things. And then other lifestyle stuff in general. Everybody should have a fitness a fitness routine of some sort. Even if it's walking every day and getting your walks in, everybody can do that. But yeah, I would recommend. I only started when I became perimenopausal, working out 3 times a week. I wish I'd have started earlier, but I absolutely love it, and it's just brilliant. But everybody can find something that works for them. I'm sure you will agree. And the fitter you are when you go into this stage of your life, the less severe your symptoms are going to be, and the easier you'll have it. So it's definitely worth starting now.
And also there's the thing about sort of the risk of osteoporosis, isn't it? So doing like strength training is really good for your bone density. And it's funny you just touched on sort of eating sort of like soy and things like that, because I don't know if it's true, but I remember reading that in Asian countries where they have a diet really high in like soy and things, they don't really have this they don't have these symptoms. So is that true?
It's true, yeah. And there's a lot of diversity in the menopause, and a lot of that is around the culture, including what we eat. And actually, in Asia, the women there call the menopause the second spring. So it's got they've got a whole different take on it. And yet their symptoms tend to be a lot milder, and also their perimenopause into menopause, the phase of it, the transition tends to be a lot shorter as well.
So, so is it like kind of once you get through the perimenopause and you're officially in menopause? Maybe first of all you can explain what that is, because I know you talked about it on your webinar, so it might be useful for the listeners. But like once you're kind of through that phase, is it like kind of that's it then, and you'll go back to kind of feeling as you were, or is it like will you be still differently like for the rest of your life?
It varies from woman to woman. But so I'll just quickly say, because again, a lot of people, especially women, are surprised by this. So the definition of menopause is when you haven't had a period for 12 months and 1 day. So anything before that is a perimenopause, but that's actually when your symptoms start, and that's when you'll have the worst symptoms. The worst symptoms you will experience will probably be within that first year. And the perimenopause phase, usually on average here in the UK and the Western world, is around 4 to 5 years, but it can last for about 10 years, unfortunately. So that's worth bearing in mind. And then post-menopause, so the menopause itself is just 1 day. That 1 day from not having a period for 12 months, menopause, which is 1 day, then you're in post-menopause, which, is really surprising. But then the symptoms tend to ease off after then. And a lot of women feel incredible after.
Oh, so that's great. That's good to know. But I was reading, I think it might have been on social media actually, but they're saying like when people, I don't know if it's menopausal as well or if it's just the perimenopause, but they're saying that we can't cope with stress as well. Is that true?
Yeah, and stress can make our symptoms worse. So hot flushes, stress makes hot flushes worse, et cetera, et cetera. That's why it's really important to change your lifestyle and manage your lifestyle, especially through exercise, to manage your stress levels, because it does have a big impact on our cortisol levels as well, a lot of different hormones. So yeah.
And I can imagine though you have the hot flushes, that can make you stressed, and then it can make it worse. So all of this can be like a bit of a vicious cycle.
It is, and like lack of sleep. So a lot of women wake up during the night between the hours of 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. and more. And then can you imagine you have to be up for work, and you get stressed if you can't get back to sleep, and anxious, and a lot of women wake up in sweats at that time of the night. So yeah, it does have a real knock-on effect. So it's learning to manage it and to educate yourself, and I
think usually does alcohol affect you more? Like, is it quite detrimental?
So a lot of women experience worse hangovers, including myself. Our tolerance for alcohol tends to lessen as well, and it can make symptoms a lot worse.
Take another thing that we can't do anymore.
Everything in moderation, though. I like to say 80% of the time, eat well and don't drink, etc., etc. And then 20% of the time we can treat ourselves. We don't have to be angels or nuns.
I suppose as obviously you were a organisational psychologist by training, so you're obviously coming from this from like quite a unique angle. What can how can the workplace culture be sort of shifted to be more understanding and supportive of women experiencing perimenopause?
It's all about awareness and creating a safe space to have conversations. Yeah, I think that's about it really. Some education, training, and creating safe spaces, so that when a woman is struggling, for whatever reason, or anybody actually, that they feel like they're able to say that. That's like the most important thing. They're not going to hide away and lie about why they're off sick or why they're not well. That it's all about that actually.
So like psychological safety, isn't it? Like being able to feel safe to say what you need to say. And it's actually quite interesting. So at this HR event last night, it was talking about because it was about the cost of living crisis and whether is it the money or is it something else. But they were asking a question at the end, and it was like, is culture or money more important? And obviously they said sort of both. If you can't afford to pay your rent and eat, then that's quite that's going to be really detrimental. But they were saying aside from that, these days, especially sort of generation, is it Z or is Z, isn't it? Generation Z, culture is like one of the most important things for them when like going to get a job. And so for employers, but it's in their best interest if they want to attract these sort of Gen Zs and people coming through, then having that sort of safe culture is really important, and it's good.
And it's good for retaining staff as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, how can women who are experiencing sort of perimenopausal symptoms, how can they sort of advocate for themselves in the workplace?
They need to speak up. They need to, but again, it's a combination, isn't it? It's them feeling safe, like you said, psychological safety. It works both ways. So it has to come from the organisation. They have to create a culture where people feel safe to speak up, and then the women feel comfortable enough to speak up. And when we talk about culture, what we're talking about is actually people. They're the ones that create the culture. And the culture really comes from the top down. So it's, so them feeling okay to speak up and to confide in their line manager. And that's why it's really crucial for organisations to start talking about this, so that then they're given permission for women to feel okay about speaking up about it. And then talk to the people sitting next to them, talk to other women who are around the same age. They could set up their own support networks or support groups. They could even do it, if work wasn't okay with them doing it in work time, then they could do something at lunchtime or they could do something after work. And they could become menopause champions as well. But it's all about communication and awareness.
And have you noticed any difference between companies with female sort of management CEOs and male?
Yeah. As you would expect, you get a stronger buy-in for training if it's to a woman. In fact, actually, when I think about it, not one man has booked me for training. It's always been women that have booked me. So hopefully that'll start to change. But organisations need to start becoming more aware of how it's affect them and the bottom line, how much it's costing them. Let's be honest, So
yeah. And also that you're losing, if people are leaving their jobs because of it, then you're losing these really talented people, that with years of experience, and you can't really afford to lose them. And if they're sort of leaving and then they're out of the workforce, and it's just a complete waste. So hopefully, going forward, people companies will start to realise. Do you think kind of social media and stuff has helped in that? With that,
massively, and we are talking about it loads, aren't we? Especially. It's great on LinkedIn, and I get a lot of support, and a lot of No, yeah, quite a lot of men, and more men are starting to engage. So it's going in the right direction. And you know, I think as well, it's important for organisations to realise that this isn't just a trend or a fad. Women are working until they're older now, and they're going to continue to work until they're older. So it's something that should have been at the forefront of the workplace for many years, and how it hasn't been is ludicrous. So I think this is a revolution, not a fad, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of feel like it should be compulsory training for every organisation and for men. Because I mean, even like obviously within the workplace, you want to support them, but also if they've got a partner that's going through it, for them to have that knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think we were talking about last night. I keep talking about my event last night, but we were talking about sort of you know, they're doing one on neurodiversity. This is why this conversation came up. But we were saying like people want to know, they want to be educated on what to say, what to do, because otherwise you're tiptoeing around things because you just feel like you don't want to say the wrong thing, you don't want to be awkward. So having training where it's actually made clear to you of things, because if you don't go through things, if you don't experience, some things you wouldn't even cross your mind, would they? You just think, and it's when people tell you, you suddenly have that light bulb, you think, oh wow. And if you didn't have that training, then you'd never know. So it can be really useful.
Yeah, and I know this from my background in mental health and mental health training, because not everybody has mental health issues, and when I would train managers, directors, etc., they might not have lived experience of it, so they didn't realise. And we've seen the difference, the shift, the massive shift around mental health, and I think this will be the same, and I hope it will, and I'm pretty sure that it will. So it's that kind of thing that way.
I mean, I mean, hopefully it'll be like a bit of a snowball effect, won't it? And also all the companies that do adopt these policies and make changes, they're going to do so much better. So everyone will have to catch up eventually. But actually, I thought brings me on nicely to your event on the 11th of May. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about it?
Yes. So I realised that female leaders seem to be kind of left out in this arena. You know, we're always kind of trying to get them on board to help their members of staff, but what about them? And a lot of women are leaders themselves at this age. That's when you would go into a leadership role, or have been doing a leadership role around the same age that you go into this transition. And I've worked with Linda Plant, who is quite well known. She's one of the interviewers on The Apprentice, and we've worked together on and off for a few years now. And her and I were having a conversation about this, and she's older than me. She's been through a lot. She's got a lot of business experience, ran businesses, and she's been through the menopause. And we said, you know, something needs to be done for female leaders. And Linda was really keen to share her experience with them. So that's what the event is about on the 11th of May. And it's just about creating a safe space for them to come together to share their experiences confidentially, and have somebody there like Linda, who's been through it herself, to talk about her experiences and what she did, you know, when she was presenting and she had brain fog or hot flushes and all of these things that people are unfortunately still afraid to talk about, especially leaders. So that's what it's about. And we're going to actually put on more of these events. It's needed. So yeah, that's happening on the 11th of May. And also next week, I'm launching a training course for men, just aimed specifically at men as well. Because there's a need there for that as well. So yeah, exciting times.
And are these in person or are they online events?
Both. So the one with Linda on the 11th of May is online, but we would be more than happy to do in-person events. We love in-person events. If an organisation would want us to go along and do that face-to-face. And I am personally, the training that I offer is both online and face-to-face, and I've been getting quite a lot of face-to-face bookings, which is fantastic. But the online stuff is brilliant because I've been working with a lot of international organisations. So I've had people come on my webinars and workshops from across the globe, which we wouldn't be able to do if it wasn't online. So I'm loving the whole hybrid thing and just being able to reach as many people as possible and get the message out there. So yeah, long answer to a short question, but yeah, it's both. It's both.
Yeah, I do think, obviously online has opened everything up, hasn't it? And there's so many things that you wouldn't have been able to go to. But on the flip side, you can't be like face to face because of the social connection. And especially if like with these kind of what you're doing, to meet people that you can then like sort of meet up with afterwards and form like some nice kind of social bonds. It's a really nice way to do it.
Yeah. And I've noticed as well that most women, they just want to talk, when I'm in the room with them, they try to talk, and we do open up conversations and Q&As at the end of the workshops that are online, and that works quite well, but nothing beats that conversation at the end when they're with their peers and everybody's speaking about their experience. It's wonderful. And that, I think that's what goes towards making change, cultural change.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll have to come along to one of them when they're next on. So I don't know if there's going to be a short answer to this. It's more I'm asking on behalf of my client who is struggling a little bit. Like if someone has lost their confidence at work or in like, driving, anything like that, are there any sort of quick, like little short tips you can give that they can try to sort of help alleviate them or to build that confidence up again, I should say?
The thing is, you have to, what works for one person might not work for another person. So, for example, HRT, for some women, that has been extraordinary. It's changed everything. For other women, it hasn't worked, or they've had side effects that haven't agreed with them, etc., etc. So, what I always say to women that I work with is you need to find what works for you and just keep trying lots of different things. Be armed with all of the information, be armed with all of the tips, the knowledge, the alternative therapies, as well as the medication, etc. Come to webinars. There's so much free stuff out there as well now. And just, be armed with what's available and find what works for you. And that's all I can say really, Jenny, because everybody is different. But in terms of tips, it's things that I've already mentioned, write it, and small things can make a massive difference, like writing things down, just write everything down. Don't think that your brain is going to work in the same way that it did, unfortunately. Not to say that it won't, but just carry pen and paper around with you. I put a lot in my notes in my phone, and it's small things like that. Try not to get too flustered. Practice mindfulness. I'm a big advocate of that. And for example, meditation isn't how it used to be, or it doesn't have this image that it used to have, where you need to sit in a dark room for 20 minutes twice a day. You can have an app on your phone, or even just something like 1 minute of breathing exercises, which you can do at your desk, you can do in the car, you can do when you're out shopping. If you feel like you're going to start to kind of lose it a little bit, or getting anxious or angry or upset and you don't know why, then just take a minute of deep breathing. It's small little things that can make all the difference. And again, back to diet, back to exercise. That is the biggest stress out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously a massive advocate for exercise, and I think it's like the biggest, or the one thing has the best reduction in all-cause mortality is exercise, and for obviously your mental health, it's amazing. So yeah, I'm always a massive advocate for that. And also, I'd like to touch on that the mindfulness. It's so I knew like kind of the benefits of meditation, mindfulness for ages, but and I'm normally I find like starting health habits normally quite easy, but for some reason meditation I found really hard. I think it's probably because my brain's always been like super busy. But I think it was after Christmas. I was like, right, I want to get started. I'm going to do this, and I was trying to do 10 minutes, which is a very long time, and so so I reduced it to 5, and I've actually managed to do it pretty much every day since Christmas now, and I love it. And it's like, and yeah, and it's just, and I think, like, you know, even like 1 minute or 3 minutes is something. And yeah, and also breath work. I think, you know, you've got your breath with you everywhere. It's so powerful. And yeah, so all those tips are great.
It's the constant. Your breath is the constant, isn't it? Mindfulness as well could be going for a walk, and being mindful when you're out and about. So getting up, getting away from your desk. It doesn't necessarily mean meditating and breathing in that respect. It could be walking around the block. It could even be walking around your living room, as long as you're doing it mindfully. So taking in your surroundings, using your 5 senses, listening to the birds, listening to the cars that are passing, all of these. It's having an awareness of what's going on around you just for a few minutes, and that really calms the nervous system and brings you back down. So yeah, that was another thing.
Yeah, because mindfulness is being present in the moment. So you could be doing anything. It's just being there. Because there is so often, aren't we, like thinking about either things we've got to do, something that happened, and to actually be present. It's quite difficult, like, and especially when you start out. But I have noticed from doing, like, well, I have been doing the formal meditation, but in the day to day now, I feel like my brain is a lot less on. Well, it's like, you know, it's not as bad as it was. So I'm making progress.
Yeah.
So I'll move on to my final question. What is one thing, you're only allowed one, I'm afraid, one thing you recommend people to take a pause for in their day to improve their mental and physical health and optimize their performance?
So a sleep routine, a bedtime routine. So the most important thing is to try and go to bed at the same around the same time every night, and to wake up at the same time every morning. Because one of the biggest issues, like I said earlier, for women going through this transition is sleep. So yeah, getting a sleep routine, going to bed at the same time every night, even on a weekend and on holiday if you can. I know that's difficult, but as much as you can, and waking up at the same time roughly every day. Try and stay away from a screen 1 hour before bed. Magnesium baths are fantastic, and magnesium in general is fantastic. I take 1 magnesium tablet before bed every night, and it knocks me out. I'm just asleep. I might not stay asleep, but it gets me to sleep. And nearly every woman that I speak to, it works for them. It's nature. They call it nature's tranquilizer, and it's really good. Look at the ventilation in your bedroom. Look at your bedding. I couldn't believe I changed my pillows a few weeks ago, and the difference that's made in my sleep as well. And then one tip that I found out a few years ago that's worked wonders is putting your mobile phone on airplane mode. So when you're asleep, even if your phone's on silent, it's still emitting signals, and it's looking for the Wi-Fi and other signals, other transmitters. So by putting it on airplane mode, your alarm will still go off, but it's not putting out any signals, so it's not interfering with your brain activity. That's the same for Kindles, iPads, anything that's connected to the internet. Make sure that they're off when you go to sleep. Some people actually turn their Wi-Fi completely off, all of the things in the house. And I've heard some really great results around that as well. So yeah, so pause before going to bed would be the answer to that question. Yeah, that would be my advice. Yeah.
Very good advice. I'm a massive sleep person. I have my whole routine because I had insomnia for years. So now I'm very regimented. But I would also add to that, Myonospital is another really good one. It was Dr. Huberman. No, not Dr. Huberman. Yeah, it's Huberman Lab. He recommended it. But if people wake up in the night, it helps you get back to sleep. So I'll link to it in the show notes for people listening, but I'll send it to you. I'll email it to you. And it has really helped me. And they basically, you see the whole thing about a sleep stack, but for me, that one's really good. So I will send it to you. But just to finish off, if people want to work with you, if they want to get you into their organisation or come to your events, where can they find you?
www.Menospace, which is MENOSPACE.co.uk. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Hayley White, at Menospace.
Perfect. Well, I will link to those for people to make it easy to find you. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been great to chat. And I really hope that in the future, like this, every company is delivering this training. So I think it's so important. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Jenny.
You've been listening to the Pause2Perform podcast with me, Jenny Devonshire. If you enjoyed this show, I'd really appreciate it if you could rate, review and subscribe. This helps other people find it, and hopefully I can help more people to improve their mental and physical health and optimise their performance.